They don't test it in New York. They don't test it in London. They test it in Jakarta, not because the science is better here, but because the resistance is weaker. That's the part they never put in press releases. The stuff about empowering communities and a global health equity, that's the headline. The fine print? It's your bloodstream, your DNA, your silence. See, when a Western billionaire funds a health initiative in the global south, everyone claps. Headlines say it's humanitarian. The photos show smiling children. The words are smooth, words like rollout, pilot program, access, but behind those words is something colder. Strategic. Take Indonesia. Big population. Ethnically diverse. Regulations flexible. It's a dream testbed for biotech. Not a conspiracy theory, just good business. CEPI. Ever heard of it? It's the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations. Sounds noble, right? Funded by the Gates Foundation. They needed a zone to trial vaccines at scale. Guess where they looked? Not Geneva. Not Silicon Valley. Southeast Asia. Why? Because people here won't riot over gene editing the way they might in France. Because public health departments are easier to buy out when half of them are underfunded and desperate. Now here's the paradox. If it's safe, why don't they run it at home? If it's experimental, why run it here? They call it philanthropy, but it's testing on someone else's body. Usually someone who can't say no or doesn't even know to say no. Let's get something straight. This isn't about being anti-vaccine or anti-science. It's about asking who gets treated like a full human being and who gets treated like a data point. Because here's what they show the cameras. Some clean, modern facility. Doctors in lab coats, a kid getting a shot and a lollipop. But what they don't show, that the kid's parents never actually consented. Not really. Not the way you or I would expect to. There's no deep dive into risks, no clear opt-out. Just a broad government program, often bundled under the phrase improving access. Sounds harmless, except access sometimes means we're testing this on your people first. And if something goes wrong, it gets buried. In legal language, in technical reports. Or worse, blamed on the people. Lack of education, or they'll say. Misinformation. You know, the usual excuse when brown folks start asking too many questions. Now look at the branding. Gates Foundation, Gavi, CPI. These aren't just donors, they're architects. They design the rollout. They shape the protocols. Sometimes they even co-own the tech being tested. That's where the contradiction stinks the most. They call it giving, but they patent the results. They say it's about saving lives, but they sell the cure back to governments later. And hey, if it's really just philanthropy, why is the data locked away? Why can't local scientists access it? Why is the health ministry left guessing half the time? You can't say it's for the public good if the public doesn't get the tools, the data, or the choice. See where I'm going with this? It's not just shady, it's a double standard. They treat Indonesia like a prototype, but treat Europe like a customer. Alright, let's stop being polite for a second and name names. The Gates Foundation isn't just handing out charity like a benevolent uncle. It's bankrolling massive operations through Gavi and CEPI, global alliances that aren't just about helping, but about controlling how and where health solutions are deployed. And Indonesia? You're not the partner. You're the lab. Back in 2009, Gates-funded programs were already being called out in India after HPV vaccine trials on young girls in tribal regions ended in several unexplained deaths. Local watchdogs said informed consent was sketchy at best. Parents weren't fully told what was being tested. Sound familiar? Fast forward to Kenya. A similar scenario played out with a tetanus vaccine that mysteriously contained hormones known to affect fertility. The Catholic Health Commission raised the alarm. The government at first denied it, then quietly dropped the program. The press moved on, but the questions never really got answered. Then there's the Philippines, another case where a mass dengue vaccination campaign, again with Gates-affiliated players, led to controversy after hundreds of children reportedly suffered severe side effects. That one actually made global headlines. But the West framed it as a developing country hiccup. Now, zoom back to Indonesia. Just 2 years ago, several bioethics groups started asking hard questions about digital health surveillance tied to vaccine drives. Why were biometric systems, like facial recognition and QR health passes, being bundled with public health? And more importantly, who owns the data? Because yeah, it wasn't Indonesia. There's this ongoing pilot program, you've probably never heard of it, testing behavior tracking software during public health campaigns. Sounds dystopian, right? But it's wrapped in soft phrases like nudging compliance or monitoring uptake. Translation? They're testing how to get people to obey without asking too many questions. And get this, local officials don't even have access to the full rollout plans. Everything's funneled through global partners. Indonesian agencies just implement. They're not the drivers. They're not even in the passenger seat. They're the road. This isn't just one isolated case, it's a pattern. And once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Look, I get it. This all sounds like some backroom plotting, but it's not paranoia if the system is literally built this way. Let's bring in Foucault for a second. Not to sound academic, but this part matters. Foucault's idea of biopolitics is basically this. Power today doesn't always show up with guns or handcuffs. It shows up through public health forms, vaccine cards, fertility programs. It's control, dressed up like care. And it works best when you don't even notice it happening. You don't resist a doctor, right? You don't push back against a gift. That's the brilliance of modern control. It hides behind compassion. Now layer that with postcolonial science, which, to put it simply, means that a lot of scientific progress in the global south still follows colonial logic. Resources, bodies, and data flow out, while solutions, patents, and profits flow back to the West. It's the same extraction model, just updated. Instead of rubber or gold, it's genetic material, medical responses, behavioral data, and instead of white uniforms, you get NGOs, public-private partnerships, and glowing PR videos. What does that mean for a place like Indonesia? It means even well-intentioned health programs might be part of a bigger machinery. One that runs on the assumption that your population is disposable enough to test on, but not important enough to share ownership with. Theories help us name what's happening. They give us a way to say, wait, this isn't neutral. This has a shape, a logic, a goal. And no, that goal isn't always your well-being. Sometimes it's just throughput, speed, metrics. Sometimes it's profit, packaged as kindness. Here's the part that really messes with me. They collect everything. Every jab, every side effect, every data point tied to your body, your ID, your family, and then they lock it away. Try asking for raw clinical data from one of these trials. Even if it's happening down the street from your house, you won't get it. Local doctors won't get it. Hell, sometimes even national health ministries don't get the full picture. Why? Because the data belongs to the research partner. That's what they'll tell you. Sounds harmless, maybe. Just legal housekeeping. But think about it. Your body, your community, your health system. And they walk away with the intellectual property. Sometimes it's not even clear what was tested. The consent forms? Vague. Full of fine print. Or written in ways that the average person can't even begin to understand. This is where it stops being healthcare. This is research, human trials. And if it is research, where's the ethics board? Where's the compensation? Where's the right to say no? They use this phrase, community informed. You'll see it in every press release. But what they mean is, we told your leaders. Maybe. And your leaders? They're stuck in a bind because saying yes brings funding. Technology visibility. So the people at the bottom? They don't get a choice. And meanwhile, those running the study, those philanthropists, they're publishing papers in English language journals, patenting gene sequences, licensing the next big therapy. Your grandmother's blood becomes a data set. Your cousin's illness becomes a line graph. But none of that ever gets back to the kampung. No translated report. No shared ownership. No feedback loop. Just extraction. That's not science. That's colonialism in a lab coat. Let's ask something simple. If this stuff is so groundbreaking, these vaccines, trackers, AI-powered diagnostics, why don't they roll it out first in Seattle or Berlin? Why is the beta version always here? You and I both know the answer. Because if anything backfires, the outrage in the West would be nuclear. Lawsuits, headlines, investigations. But here, it's a different script. If people get sick, it's blamed on underlying conditions. If people speak out, they're accused of spreading rumors. And if something goes really wrong, there's always a quiet little study later saying further research is needed. No accountability, no names, just a footnote. It's not just unfair, it's insulting, because it assumes your life matters less, that the risk you take is acceptable, because you're not them. And the kicker? When the product's perfected, when the trial's done and the bugs are worked out, guess who pays to buy it back? Yeah, your government, using your taxes. So not only were you the guinea pig, you're the customer too. They get the data, they get the patent, you get the bill. Still think this is about charity? Let's talk about home. Indonesia's not just a test site, it's a gold mine. And I don't mean oil or nickel, I mean people. 270 million of them, all wrapped in legal gray zones, spotty oversight, and a public health system that's underfunded on purpose. For these global health outfits, that's the dream. High numbers, low noise. There was this gene drive mosquito project being pitched a while back. On paper, it's about fighting dengue. But what's really going on is they're messing with ecological systems they don't fully understand. And they want to test it where backlash is manageable, where media attention is slow, where outrage fizzles out. Then there's biometric health IDs, rolled out fast during the pandemic. Suddenly your vaccine status was tied to a QR code. Sounds efficient, right? Except no one told you how long the data would be stored, who gets to access it, or how it's being cross-matched with other systems. Banks, schools, border control. Ask Komnas HAM or LSAM. These watchdogs have been raising red flags for years, not just about the ethics, but about sovereignty, about how the state's outsourcing responsibility to foreign actors while pretending it's modernizing healthcare. Meanwhile, most people don't even know they're in an experiment. No one says the word. Pilot sounds safe. Innovation sounds sexy, until you realize the tech isn't homegrown, the control isn't local, and the benefits? They rarely stick around. Jakarta signs off, the provinces implement, and the foreign partner writes the report. You tell me, is that healthcare? Or just field testing with a nicer font? Let's say we're not just complaining. Let's say we're imagining something better. What would it look like if Indonesia wasn't the lab rat, but the architect? If public health partnerships actually meant partnership, not outsourcing, not data siphoning, not quiet compliance. For starters, the trials would be co-owned. If your hospitals host it, your universities help develop it, your people take the risk, then your country gets a piece of the IP full stop. And informed consent wouldn't be some checkbox at the bottom of a pamphlet no one reads. It would be public debates, town hall meetings, radio broadcasts in local languages explaining exactly what's going on and what people are signing up for or opting out of. Oh, and the data? Stored locally. Transparent audit trails. Accessible to Indonesian researchers first, not last. Not locked behind paywalls in foreign journals or buried in PDF footnotes. We'd stop measuring success by how many people comply. We'd start measuring it by how many people understand. Ask questions. Push back. That's real progress. We'd stop being passive recipients of charity and start being negotiators. You want to test your tech here? Fine. But we set the terms. We decide who benefits. We draw the line between partnership and extraction. That's not being radical. That's just being sovereign. So here we are. You're not paranoid for asking questions. You're not a conspiracy theorist for noticing patterns. You're just awake in a world that's hoping you stay distracted. They wrap it in good intentions, and maybe some of it is well-intentioned. But that doesn't change the fact that power always moves quietly, especially when it shows up with money and a smile. You don't have to be an expert to smell when something's off. You just have to trust your gut when you see a one-way street dressed up like a handshake. I'm not telling you to be scared. I'm telling you to stay uncomfortable. That discomfort, that's yours. That's where your critical thinking lives, and trust me, it's worth protecting. Because the moment you start asking who owns this, who profits from this, who controls this, that's the moment things start to shift. Maybe not for them, not yet, but for you, that's where it begins. And look, I don't have a magic fix, but I do know this. Silence is a currency, and they've been cashing in on yours for too long. So ask the questions, say the quiet part out loud, don't wait for permission. That's how you stay human in a system that treats you like a trial.